ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track. And ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
We off?
30 seconds of carefree bliss.
Oof, like wind in your hair carefree.
Oh, like using Clorox disinfecting all-purpose cleaner in the home carefree.
Yes!
Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox carefree.
He's on a roll now.
Spit toothpaste on the faucet.
You got it. You got it.
Peanut butter on the light switch.
Oh, spritz, spritz.
Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
Hello, welcome to 101 Part-Time Jobs with me, Giles Bidder. This is the show where we hear from musicians and artists on what it's like to be an artist today, how it works with the changing world. And someone who's been doing it long enough to see it change so many times is Patrick Wolf. He hasn't released an album in 13 years, and now he's about to come back with the new one, Crying the Neck, it's called, out the 13th of June. A handful of singles have come out from it. It sounds excellent. He produced all of it. He lives in East Kent, where he's found a home. And this all comes after a life full of ups and downs. He has lived through so many experiences that I think probably a dozen people could share between them. So this is Patrick Wolf on 101 Part-Time Jobs. Thank you so much for being here. If you're able to leave a review or can subscribe on Spotify or Apple, that would be massively appreciated. We put out 2 episodes every week with bands and artists who we think you'll like and you want to get to know more. So we'd love to have you along. After the jump, it's Patrick Wolf here on 101 Part-Time Jobs. 101 Part-Time Jobs. Sun Estrella Galicia's Dot to Dot warm-up show will be headlined by Big Special on the 5th of May at Oslo and Hackney. Big Special, if you don't know them, are excellent. You might have heard them on the new Black Mirror or seen photos from their massive sold-out show at Kentish Town Forum recently. Sun Estrella Galicia are the independent, family-owned, music-loving brewery with a particular interest in sustainability and community. And in their warm-up for their partnership with Dot to Dot Festival, where you can catch Fat Dog, Jasmine 40, Sprints, and loads of other great bands. This is a one-off chance to see Big Special at the intimate and independent Oslo venue in Hackney. 5th of May, Big Special, warming up Dot to Dot Festival in partnership with Sun Estrella Galicia. Get your tickets before they're gone from Dice.
I kind of feel it's part of the ritual of making a new album for me is to try and find a new muse, like a new configuration of my fingers, or for instance, like I'm saving the hurdy-gurdy for that moment when, you know, deep crisis, something, the big inspiration of a hurdy-gurdy in my lap, and you know, I'm putting that off because each album kind of has like a central incidental moment with an instrument where I go, okay, well, this, as a producer, this is going to flesh out a certain sound, and sometimes, you know, I can go to an instrument. People think I play a lot of instruments, but if you have played 4-string viola, you can kind of transfer that to any 4-string instrument, really, whichever way around. And piano, you can just end up playing harpsichord or organ and use it. It's the same thing. So it looks like a lot of instruments, but I can sit down and I do think sometimes an instrument can speak to you. Yeah.
I mean, in your experience being a musician or an artist since a young age, I think there are some things that when you choose that life, or, you know, it chooses you, or however, it's like there are some things you just accept that you either have the power to do or you don't have the power to do. How were you, you know, this is a big question, but if you're able to kind of answer it, how were you at accepting that becoming a musician, writing music, prioritizing it, there were going to be these sacrifices or just things that simply you couldn't do? How were you at accepting of that?
There's a Joseph Campbell quote about the path of an artist and musician. Don't be afraid of being hungry. You know, that's stopping you. Don't, you know, and what I take that is, it's like I don't think I ever put that in a level of concern for fulfilling the thing I felt I was put on the planet to do. So, you know, financially, as a songwriter, since the early days, I've always, through royalties, always been, you know, 'cause I'm the only person that writes for myself. I don't co-write with anybody. I got my first royalty check from after lycanthropy, so 2003. On the PRS, it said there was a gym in Sweden that was playing. I didn't even gyms for a thing back in 2003, but I got like a check through, and I put it straight into recording the piano parts for Wind and the Wires, and my work has always looked after me, my writing around the world. So I, in a way, I've and not extravagantly at all, but like I've felt I've always I take care of my work and my work takes care of me, really. So I would never there are so many things to worry about at the beginning of, I was just actually thinking about TikTok, of bombardment of young people's minds about like everything is about algorithmic, how to beat the algorithm, how to get on Spotify, how to, like, numbers. It's so capitalist and so commercial that all this advice, nothing is to do with the actual path of good artistry and living a great life, a life of adventure and wonder and things that as public we want from our artists and from the things that we give our ears and our lives to. Sometimes, you know, we throw ourselves under the train of someone's work, like we, you know, writers, but that's not being encouraged right now. It's so I would say the last thing people need to worry about is money. And it might sound trite, it might sound like somebody who, yeah, it's okay for you. I'm sure, and there are certainly, it's okay for you, Patrick. But I really do think that the onus needs to come back around to worry about the after. If you think, if you go from a practical way to a woo-woo way about it, the work has to come first. The work has to be great and visionary. And visionary doesn't worry about the bills at the beginning, at least, you know?
In a way, you're quite ahead of your time being the singular songwriter, because now that's how a lot of artists, the primary way that artists can kind of keep on doing it. And yeah, we are talking about money here, but you know, from a royalties point of view, but also from a travel point of view. Yeah, there was never a decision. None of my decisions earlier on, otherwise I'd be very, very rich by now, that were about money at all. You know, I saw on the job descriptions of life, Joni Mitchell, Leonard Cohen, Buffy Sainte-Marie, none of the Kate Bush, none of these people had co-writes. None. Tori Amos never had co-writes. PJ Harvey. So actually, it's actually how the whole job arrived, really, for musicians after songwrite. You know, where there's that whole period where folk singers like Buffy Sainte-Marie, they couldn't be seen as writing their own songs. And they had to, Buffy told me she had to lie to the audience and say that it was a traditional song because it seemed really sacrilegious and commercial to be writing songs and stuffing them in around folk songs. So this whole thing that I do now, it began in the 60s as out of folk singers, really. And because really before that we had songwriters were people like Lieber and Stoller and people that were writing for Hollywood or for Elvis or, you know, the combination of songwriter and singer kind of came quite a kind of autonomous auteur kind of route to
expressing yourself in the 60s. I think it's not really encouraged. People, it's still, I feel, not encouraged enough. You're encouraged more to go to like some writing camp with 20 people than to spend 6 months alone with your thoughts and coming down from the mountain to tell people what you've about that fire in your head, so to speak. Yeah,
it sounds like a lonely path.
Yes, it is. I've one of the things that stops me from working is how lonely it can be, and you just have to push through it. Definitely, especially producing my own work as well. It can be very like going to the studio in the garden. Like I have to. I always thought like having a goldfish would be good in the studio, just like seeing some other kind of life. Like I have a cat now that comes and sits at the top of a vocal booth, but the loneliness is part of me is love solitude. But when it comes down to being practical within that, it can be quite exhausting. Yeah.
Jobs! Coming up with a vision and following it through in your 20s and 30s when so much of life is changing around you, how do you think you dealt with those responsibilities?
The big bomb that dropped in my 30s because of the way I behaved in my 20s was I shirked all responsibility for a long period of time. I used to just live off a weekly wage, and I asked my management. We had a setup where I didn't know how much money I was earning, and I even signed, unfortunately, power of attorney to over, and I literally just lived a kind of fantasy life. I took that way too far, to the point where like I didn't know how to. It was like that. What is that thing of Michael Jackson where like they go to like Louis Theroux goes, he doesn't know how to use a vacuum cleaner, like, and he's just staring at this thing. Like I didn't know how to crack an egg and put it in a pan. Like my feet came off the ground around like the Magic Position, which was my first major label. And I took the shirking of responsibilities to the extreme in a way that I thought, but we're talking about things about money, things about domesticity, to the point where I was like, I'm going to take the life of an artist, I'm going to that's going to be my responsibility. And so the two completely divided at a point in my life where I kind of entered a fantasy world, which came back to it turned into a complete nightmare for me in my 30s when it was time to grow up and work out what was happening while I was in on the other side of the wardrobe. I'm not sure if it's possible now, in this day and age. It certainly was possible for many people in 2007 to 10, I think, and encouraged, definitely. So
with that period of time being such an important time for you as an artist and getting signed to a major label, I think a lot of people would look back on those times, with a bit of fondness. How do you look back on those times now?
I don't look back at those times. That's the answer. I think that's been one of the most important things for me. My story was like the Hans Christian Andersen tinderbox up in a dirty old attic on your own, and it's like with my misery and my trauma and medicating that. So like, and then get dressed up, go out and get photographed at a mobile phone launch, and it's like, it was a real, a lot more of a solitary confinement story, I'd say, more than anything. Yeah. I have had to go from being backward facing to forward facing, basically. So, and it's there's a certain amount of accountability that comes when you enter recovery, and of forensically going through the past and then taking and learning from it, and then closing the book so that you can start, to use the most basic metaphor on earth, a new book. And so I don't revel. I also don't believe it's from the line of abuse that my hedonism went into, that I don't really believe in glorification, especially when I see people of a younger age dying. And I think that it's a certain responsibility I feel I've taken away with my sobriety that I don't look back. I don't revel in the glory of it. And I'm just very grateful to be alive and to see what I can do with the time I have ahead of me now. Yeah.
101.
This show is called 101 Part-Time Jobs. That, you know, some musicians I speak to still do work other jobs, whether they need to or the situation calls for it or it makes sense. Your job seems to be, tell me if I'm wrong, seems to be looking at this ball of experiences, this ball of feelings, and somehow making sense of them. And I can see how that works on a producer level and a songwriter level, but also on a human level of like, okay, who am I and what do I want to do with my time here? Do you feel like you're on a clear path at the moment with this new album coming out, first songs in 13 years? You know, I imagine you must have learned a lot about the industry of which you operate in.
The industry has changed every 3 years, I'd say. You know, so I've seen lots of different incarnations of it. I sat out and observed for a long period of time and didn't listen to music, didn't pay any attention to the music industry. I remember I feel very close and confident with my work and what I have to do with the next 4 albums. Whether I feel as passionate about being in the music industry and whether I like being in the music industry is a completely different subject. But I love doing my work, and in a way I have to do whatever I can in order to make sure I can turn the right locks in the escape room to make it out of that room into the next album, you know, and so at the moment I do feel a bit like I'm in the escape room and I've got to get onto album 8, you know. And so, but I do, whether over time it will be, my work will move into literature or into another form. I'm not sure. I think that's probably something I'm starting to realize it might do. But I feel very close to the work, whatever it might be right now, and it has taken the completion of that EP and then this album and following through right to what I envisioned the front cover to be, or the, you know, all these kind of like the moment where you've kind of brought it down over the touchline, you go, oh my God, like that thing I dreamed about 3 years ago. It used to be so regular to me to deliver that every 2 years. Then you don't do it for 10 years. And then suddenly it feels really miraculous. And like, I've proven that I can do it again. And now I'm just got to get back into that rhythm of finishing things and sharing them with, then having the courage to share it with the world, you know, in whatever kind of way it gets received, you know. I still haven't experienced in the album campaign the reviews yet, or I haven't experienced that for a very long time, really. So that will be, I think, I care a lot less what people think than I used to. So I think I should be okay.
Is there an urgency there? I think a lot, you know, there's, because music is changing so much. I imagine being an artist, whether you plan to or not, you see what other people are doing and you think, okay, how do I keep up? How do I keep all my, you know, and it's awful. Look, you know, I'm not saying music is not a competition. Music is art. It's to be enjoyed in different ways. But I can see how, as an artist, you know that you're in this world where,
I think one of the most important things for me is to not see this as a sport, and not to be in a race with anybody. I mean, if you know, statistically, I would be you know, booted out of the Olympics by now in terms of things, you know, on paper that you're meant to achieve within the music industry. It's none of that really comes anywhere near, and I think it would be very disruptive for me to put it anywhere near my vocation now. You know, it's like it helps that I don't think there are many people that could possibly do what I do. So I don't really feel in competition with anybody. And in terms of like achievements, I'm not very good at achieving things in the music industry. So it's just, I just have as I said, I just want to make it through to make the next album. That's my own responsibility, really. Yeah.
I didn't know that you had played with Patti Smith live.
Yeah, from about 2010 onwards. We met just after The Bachelor, no, just before The Bachelor came out, or around this time. So 2009, actually, probably at Patti, at Larne Book Festival, and we started playing kind of improv then, and we did our first gig was in Dylan Thomas's Boathouse, and then since then, during that period of not working, the only shows that I did do was with Patti and her band playing fiddle or guitar or piano. Yeah.
Did that expand what a live show could be? And these shows that you're doing now, have you been able to sort of paint a bigger, has your canvas become bigger there about what you can do and collaborations or people on stage for one gig or all the gigs, building out that band? What does that look like? I
mean, Patti's band is the idea of a backing track would be separate. It's incredibly live. What did happen was that I with them as my only musical influence for about 8 years, is that I was actually all set to finish my album in New York in Tony Shanahan's studio as a live band work. This was in 2021, and this is how heavily influenced I was by that sound, because it was the only thing I was exposed to. And the studio was booked, and then we had news from the Royal Marsden Hospital that my mother only had 2 weeks to live, and so I went home instead of going to finish that album. And it gave me the timing of that was very profound to me, and it kind of again made me stop working for a few years and thinking about work. The idea that this kind of like album project died at the same time as my mother, it was all kind of very like, okay, start again. And again, with the work that I'm doing now, was really rekindle my ear as a producer and what fascinates me, and not as a kind of duty and of being saturated with Patti's band and her work. It was like I need to really make sure there are so many demos which sound like a Patti Smith demo, from that period, and they're charming, but they're not me, and so it's to I learned it and then I unlearned it, as a simple question. But I think there are definitely things that have stayed with me. I mean, I never used to play as much fiddle, and as I did before. Now, as I did before I met Patti, I really think that became my first instrument during those years, really, and it stayed my first instrument since.
Where we started was talking about new instruments and new sounds, new feelings. You mentioned the hurdy-gurdy, and I had to quickly Google that and sort of see. It sort of looks like something that would be in Game of Thrones or something. But really, what could your next instrument be? What could you see your next instrument being?
I want to make my own instrument. I know exactly, because now I've played enough I've played enough things to know what I want out of an instrument now, and it doesn't exist basically. So I'd love to find an instrument maker, and I have an idea definitely for an instrument. So I think middle-age crisis, let's invent an instrument. So
I usually ask Patrick about people's sort of, in a bit of Schadenfreude kind of sense, what people's worst days of work have been. You probably haven't had many outside of music.
I started working when I was 14, actually.
Young. Your parents put you out there.
I worked at a sandwich shop in Wandsworth, and illegally, I guess, because you're 14. So, and then I was always working. After that, I became a shop boy in Covent Garden when I was 16, because I was very tall and very glamorous, and so I get be front of house for different fashion shops. And
how did that feel? I mean, they're quite stuffy places.
I earned enough money to run away from home, so and but I got to serve Pete Burns and people like that, when I was 16. So that felt very glamorous, Then I went on to repairing leather jackets and old clothes on the top floor of a vintage shop in Camden Market. I was always working. Then I was a nursery school piano teacher in Wandsworth at St Anne's Church, and these were my last two jobs were lots of different versions of waiting, and then at the cafe on Clapham Common. It sounded very sussy at the time, but like basically like I was so close to releasing my first EP and my first album. I had to work throughout my first EP, but I got a booking agent on my first album and started touring around Germany and Spain and making little bits of money. But and then I've never worked since then. So but before that, it was making sandwiches on Clapham Common in a cafe by the bandstand, and I got fired for putting the wrong sandwich filling in the wrong sandwich, and
It seems a bit harsh.
Well, I think she just could tell I didn't want to be there, you know. and she said, Patrick, I'm going to have to let you go. You're just not very professional. And I said, well, I didn't realize making sandwiches was a profession, and then I left. So.
I know a couple of people who could make sandwiches as a profession.
Yeah, I mean, now at my age, I think they've got to go. It's like, it's not just profession, it's an art. So, but
it's an art, and if you know someone who does it, then you are very lucky.
At 18, it felt like the beginning of my movie, you know, walking out of sandwich shops. So.
That's your Ferris Bueller moment.
Yeah.
So there was Patrick Wolf here on 101 Part-Time Jobs. His 7th album and first in 13 years, Crying the Neck, is out on the 13th of June. I hope you enjoyed that. Feel free to subscribe or leave a review. All that stuff massively helps us. We're an independent show. We want to keep on doing this, bootstrapping, as they say, and all of that, reviews, subscriber numbers, that all helps massively. So thank you, and we'll see you hopefully later on this week with an episode with Samantha Crane, who's got an excellent new album out called Gumshoe. See you then. Cheers.
101 Part-Time Jobs is hosted by Giles Bidder and produced by me, Olivia Swash. This has been a Mighty Moon Media production.